Welcome again to our international track, and we already had a couple of interesting conversations today. We had this international track about the Middle East at the beginning, some technologies, and now we have a panel which is about the European perspective of energy communities, as already said, the risks and the resiliency that we can expect from this. This presentation, this panel is a little bit different than other panels because I will invite every panelist to give an initial introductory presentation to just set the stage, and then we'll have a conversation around this and also, of course, take questions from the audience. One thing I forgot to say, and we forgot this also to promote on Monday and Tuesday, we're actually giving away a platinum Xendee licenses, and we posted this on our announcements, but we never actually really announced it in the session. So if you go to sessions, the chances for winning such a license just increases. So now let's start with this panel. I want to introduce first Hemma. Hemma Bieser studied physics at the Vienna University of Technology. After several positions in the private sector and public administration, Hemma founded her own innovation agency, Avantsmart, and she's an expert in user-centric innovation and shapes transition processes and regional energy systems. Today, she will speak actually on behalf of the Austrian government about all the programs that are going on there, or some of these programs going on there to support the energy transition and also scale up some of the research internationally. So the second person that we have here is Peter Käfer. He's an entrepreneur. He already had a startup company, which he successfully sold, I think 2 years ago, 1.5 years ago, Mio Energy. He will talk maybe a little bit about this, but Peter studied architecture at Graz University of Technology, and he worked at several architectural firms, and as said, he started Mio Energy, the first integrated energy management system for electricity and heat. Successfully sold it, and now he's starting a new company, IGE, which is very focused on storage. And I think we'll talk a little bit more about storage because of this with him today. And then last but not least, we have Herbert Saurugg. Herbert, since 2011, has focused on the increasing interconnection and complexity of our society. His primary focus lies on critical infrastructures and their interdependencies. Central themes in his work include the European power supply system and the highly realistic scenario of a Europe-wide power and infrastructure failure blackout. So I think we will hear a lot about the risks that we are having, maybe because of renewable energy or high penetration of renewable energy today. He assists municipalities, businesses, and other organizations in preparing for such blackout events. His professional background includes a career as a commissioned officer in the Austrian Armed Forces. He's a major retired. He served there in the field of cybersecurity until 2012. So with this introduction of the theme, as I said, I want to hand it over to each of you for the introductory presentation, and then we'll discuss this topic. So Hemma, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much, Michael. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are joining us from today. Thank you so much for having me here, and a big thank you to the Xendee team for organizing that great event. It's a real pleasure to be here with you. My name is Hemma Bieser. I run a consulting company called Avantsmart in Vienna in Austria, and I have the privilege of managing an initiative for the Austrian Federal Ministry, which is focused on something I'm really excited to share with you today: how we can shape the energy transition by putting people, by putting citizens at the center of it. So let's dive in. Just a quick word about who I am. So I have 3 hats on today. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a startup coach for young energy companies. And I'm also an advisor to the Austrian Ministry of Innovation, Mobility and Infrastructure. What ties all of that together is one question I keep coming back to: How do we build an energy system that works not just technically, but socially? A system people actually want to be part of. Here's what I have planned for the next 10 minutes to talk about. First, I would like to talk about what the energy system transition really means and why citizen power is becoming such a force in Europe. Second, I'm going to introduce you so-called transition labs, a hands-on initiative powered by our federal ministry. And third, I will show you how this connects to a much bigger EU-wide research and innovation effort called the Clean Energy Transition Partnership. And there's a way for you to get involved at the end, so stay with us. Energy system transition. What are we talking about? Let's start with language, because words matter here. When people talk about the energy transition, they often mean two very different things. On the left, we have system integration. That's about taking new technologies, solar, wind, storage, e-mobility, and fitting them into the grid and market structures we already have. It's incremental. It's about compatibility. On the right, we have system design. And this is the harder, more interesting challenges. It means redesigning the architecture of the system itself around the reality that our generation is now fluctuating. That means a focus on flexibility, on sector coupling, and on decentralization. That's what you in your Xendee universe, I think, call the microgrids. The shift I want to highlight today is the move from simply integrating technology to redesigning the whole system. And I think this is one of my favorite slides today, because it captures a shift in how we think about people in the energy system. For decades, the person at the end of the wire was just a consumer. Passive, disconnected. Energy was simply a means to an end. Then, with smart meters, and we have a lot of them in Austria, nearly 100% of our households and companies, they have smart meters. So with the smart meters, they became a customer, someone making rational, transactional choices about price and efficiency. But where we are heading is something even different. People are becoming citizens of the energy system, active, identified, engaged in co-creation, local resilience, and social participation. The terminology is finally catching up with reality. People don't just want to buy electricity, they want to be part of the solution. Looking for my slides. This is what we call civic engagement and ownership. In integrated regional systems, citizens aren't customers, they are co-owners through what we call energy communities, a term that already Michael introduced in the opening. And when people own a piece of the local energy system, something powerful happens. They support the transition both financially and emotionally. The payoff is real. You get much higher acceptance for new infrastructure. You build regional value chains that keep money in the community. Energy starts to be treated as a common good, and you get collective self-consumption of locally produced energy. The lesson for us is simple. We need technology and system solutions that are driven by the needs of the people who own them, not handed down from the top. So how do we actually do that in Austria and in Europe? That brings me to the heart of my talk, the Regional Energy System Transition Labs, which is a quite long term description of what we do. So think of transition labs as a real place, a region, where all pieces of the energy system come together. Renewable generation, the grid, buildings, municipal facilities, producing companies, or even food stores. And in the middle sits the lab itself, giving these regional players something they normally can't access on their own. A research and innovation platform, including things like co-simulation and digital twins, plus a collaboration platform. In short, a transition lab gives regional initiatives access to the research and innovation ecosystem. Now I have an overview what a transition lab delivers. So actually these are 6 different things. It creates a real-world sandbox where we can test scenarios for a system running on up to 100% renewable supply. It enables systemic integration across the whole value chain, generation, storage, transport, and consumption. And it brings together a full stakeholder ecosystem, regional need owners, decision makers, technology providers, and of course, researchers. It gives us validation and monitoring, especially around making components from different providers, including startups and SMEs, and they actually work together in that kind of transition labs. It produces good practice blueprints, transferable region-typical solutions that other places can copy. And it's built for sustainable growth, with a plan to keep the lab viable well beyond the initial project. The usual duration of these initial projects is about 5 years, and most of them are quite in the middle of their time now. So the bottom line, in the transition labs, we develop and test solutions in a close to reality version of the energy system of tomorrow. So I apologize that this page is really only in German available, but what it should show is that in my home country we have a real success story of so-called energy communities. In total, we have nearly 10,000 different types of energy communities in Austria. We assume that it's about 300 gigawatt hours on production and energy sharing in these communities. I think these numbers are 3 or 4 months old. What I have heard during the last weeks is that we even have more than 200 members of energy communities already in Austria. And on the right you can see, so this is the map of Austria, and we have 6 different transition labs already in Austria, installed in 6 different regions. And what I have to add now is that this isn't just an Austria story either. We have already identified and reached out to around 20 potential partner initiatives across other European countries. And this brings me to the vision that ties it all together. We call it No Rest, the Network of Energy System Transition Labs. The idea is to establish regional transition labs all across Europe, acting as an intermediary structure between energy communities and the research and innovation ecosystem. Crucially, we want to do this by building on organizations that already exist, what we like to call the No New Animals principle. Because we do not need more institutions. What we need to do is to connect and empower the existing ones we have. And then we link these labs together transnationally into one powerful knowledge and innovation network. And there's already a vehicle to make this happen, the so-called Clean Energy Transition Partnership, co-funded by the European Commission. This is big because more than 30 countries, over 20 EU member states, plus associated countries, and importantly for this audience, partners reaching well beyond Europe, including Canada, India, and South Korea, are taking part of this or in this initiative. It brings together more than 47 funding agencies and ministries, and with annual calls for research and innovation, with a total grant sum of around 140 million euros a year. The work I have described here lives inside the Transition Initiative 5, which is called Integrated Regional Energy Systems. So finally, let me bring it all together with 3 key takeaways. First, citizen power is real in Austria, it's real in Europe. Strong movements of citizens are actively shaping the energy transition and driving systemic change in Austria and across the European Union. Second, this transition labs, they let us design, build and test the energy system of the future in a real life environment. If you'd like to follow along what we are doing, we have established a LinkedIn group, which is called the No Rest Dialogue, and I'd love to see you there. And third and finally, the Clean Energy Transition Partnership is open to partners in the European Union and beyond, including here in North America. And if anything I've said today sparked an idea, get connected and apply. You will find every information you need on the website cetpartnership.eu. Yeah, thank you so much for your time and your attention.
Thank you, Hemma. And before you hand it over to Peter, I just want to point this out. Alone the number of 10,000 energy communities is a success story. And yes, they are not microgrids at the moment, but I think we would be happy if we would have 10,000 microgrids in the United States. So I think that's a good program. So Peter.
I tried. Okay, sharing my presentation. Everything okay?
Yep, I see it.
Okay. Good morning or good evening, everybody. Thank you, Michael, for inviting me and for the introduction. Yes, for Hemma, R&D is catching up with reality. I will try it in a more technocratic view, but also bottom up without new animals. and what I'm gonna talk about today is advanced engineering for the energy transition, with the focus on energy storage technologies. My name is Peter Käfer. I'm an architect and software engineer. After working several years in architecture offices, I switched into a software development business. Round about 12 years ago, I founded the startup company Mio Energy. It was the first integrated energy management system for power and heat. After selling the company to the market leader for energy solutions in family houses here in Austria, 1 year ago, I co-founded IGE, an advanced engineering group for mid-size and bigger distributed energy projects. This slide highlights holistic system thinking. Well, it's the core competence of an educated architect like me. At the center, you can see a magic quadrant illustrating how we can make our energy systems fit for the future. Our energy system should be sustainable and low or better zero carbon, because protecting the planet is common sense. Integrated into existing infrastructure while increasing independence from centralized systems. Secure and reliable. Referring to this, Herbert will discuss blackout prevention in his talk later on. At the end, energy should be affordable for customers and profitable for investors, because without economic success, there will be no acceleration in the energy transition. Technology is ready by now and commercially competitive, but we need advanced engineering for connecting these dots. A holistic approach is essential for solving today's energy distribution challenges. Following the golden years of government incentives for photovoltaic installations in Europe, we have issues with grid stability by now. Grid operators are calling for additional investments in infrastructure upgrades, while fossil generation is still required to balance the grid when the sun is not shining. But grid upgrades are a huge undertaking, and it takes a long period of time. It's faster to retrofit existing building structures with balanced integration into the existing grid. On the right-hand side, you can see an IGE reference project. This innovation campus in Graz demonstrates our approach. The site combines renewable generation for photovoltaics and hydropower with intelligent EV charging and various energy storage systems. For the Innovation Campus, we implemented both electrical and thermal energy storage solutions. Furthermore, we used the thermal mass of the buildings for flexibility in heating and cooling. Fact is, to maximize the effective use of renewable energy, all available flexibility options are required. Our core idea is to reduce complexity. This by building intelligent storage cells in the short term. Each one of these cells can evolve into a microgrid or also can be easily connected to the electricity market in the meantime. In the European electricity market, energy communities provide a unique opportunity. Through this concept, local storage cells can be balanced with renewable generation located elsewhere. It's the complementary integration of wind and hydropower with local PV or CHP installations. Combined with energy storage cells, the mix of energy resources creates highly independent energy systems. But every retrofitting project is different. This is why we currently develop an easy-to-use engineering framework. There is a big need for streamlining the implementation process with various stakeholders. A lot of stakeholders, as Hemma mentioned. Technical expertise, engineering guidance, legal consultancy for the dynamic electricity market is required. Our experienced IGE partners have defined 4 segments. Quick need analysis to identify profitable opportunities rapidly. Retrofitting buildings by integrating different storage technologies. All this seamlessly combined by means of AI-based tools. The outlook for the near future is that best practice engineering standards will be shared in a broader ecosystem, shared with engineers, technology partners, installers, energy community stakeholders, and last but not least, financing institutions. Thank you for listening.
I think it's becoming clear what Bieser wants to do. He wants to convert all these 10,000 energy communities, which are just relying on PV, to real microgrids. So I think this is why we're here today. But Herbert, let's talk a little bit about
the complementary. Okay.
The conversation.
Okay, I have to quit my presentation. I'm sorry. Okay.
So you can see?
Yes.
No.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
But I can't. Okay, thank you for the invitation and for the possibility to bring in some external perspective on security and systems. We have heard already a lot about system thinking, I think, but I would like to bring in some additional points. I was already introduced by Michael. Normally, I'm speaking about blackout and how we can prepare for the consequences. But in general, I'm dealing with complexity, interconnected systems, and system thinking, which is driving me. And yeah, and one very important systemic wisdom is that understanding the details always comes from knowing the whole and not the other way around. So you need the big picture to make the right decisions and the right products, hopefully. And so this is very important for me and for my talk. And I would like to start with interconnectivity, which led in the last decades to very large benefits for us all in the whole supply and critical infrastructures. But we most often overlook that interconnectivity is not only positive, but has also a downside. And chaotic interconnectivity increases the complexity and vulnerability of systems and each more of us as society. And we see this nowadays, especially with the blockade of the Strait of Hormuz, which I think will affect us in the next months very heavily, also in the supply chains in different ways. And so my message is we should also look to these dark sides of interconnectivity to understand better the developments and to prevent developments. And robust versus fragile system structures, we know also a systemic wisdom that not interconnected structures, entities are very unstable and fragile. And with interconnectivity, the stability and robustness of systems are increasing. But this is not working out if you go ahead without some substructures, because these structures tend to collapse. And to raise stability also in a further growth, you need substructures and subsystems. So this is very important to take with. And when we look to the reality, especially in Europe, we see that politics is very often tend to raise more centralized systems, and also the European power or the electricity market has no task for supply security, but can act as there is a copper plate. So everywhere you can take electricity and feed in without restriction, and this is not the reality, and this could be dangerous. And especially with this last wisdom, we need substructures to hold the high reliability and stability as we are used to in Europe. And on the other hand, we see also more dwarf castles, so a lot of narrow-minded thinking. Everyone just wants to tend to their own little patch and thinks that enough to understand the whole system. And this is also dangerous. So different things which could endanger our high reliability system of electricity supply. So the next systemic wisdom is that a viable system design needs three major entities. The first entity is reduced energy and resource consumption, efficiency, but also simplicity, because then you have less chance to get in troubles. The second entity is decentralization, autonomous functional units. So there is no central control in nature, and so this is also very important for technical structures. And the third below is error friendliness, error tolerance, and diversity. And this is also not really fitting to our reality, because we try more to prevent incidents and not so much how to deal with incidents, because there's nowhere 100% security. Yeah, and so the question is, with our special focus on PV and wind production, with the problem that it's not available when you need it, but only when the weather conditions are okay. If this is the right way to reach this viable system design, and I think it's not really. And we would need a different structure to the structure we have until now, and it will be a cellular structure, as we have heard already many times during this conference, and it's also the topic of Xendee with microgrids. And it's not something completely new. It's only looking to the nature where every livestock is organized in cell structures, and therefore we should learn from nature and from evolution how to build robust structures. And it's also not a question of either or, centralized or decentralized system, but as well as because we will, especially in Europe, where we have a very reliable and very successful centralized system, we will use this even for several years or decades still, because you can't change the system very fast, especially while you should when you have a reliable system. So it needs a cooperation between both ways. And the positive chance of a cellular structure is that you can place them during live operation without disturbing the centralized system, but you can raise robustness bottom up with the cellular structure. So it's a good cooperation possible. But at the moment, we see everywhere, or the most often, silo thinking. That means until now we have mostly thought about PV establishment or wind production, and now more and more also storage. Then, of course, grid establishment, and then centralized structures and decentralized structures. But we need not single parts, or not only single parts, we need a common picture and to do it together. And it's not about renewable against nuclear or anything else. We need everything we have at the moment to hold our high reliability. And the biggest problem at the moment, from my point of view, is too less complex regulation and subsidized because they are driving the wrong developments, and it would need more interconnected thinking to make the right decisions, and also the subsidies. Yeah, and the main topic is not a single part of the whole system, and we have heard already from Peter before, the central point of the transformation is the energy management system, which is interconnecting electricity, but also heat or cooling, and even more also mobility. And so that we could use energy in the best way and most efficient, and also with the storage problem, we have much more possibilities for flexibility. What me concerns is that we see at the moment uncontrolled growth of different control systems, battery management systems, home energy management systems, which we urgently need for the transformation. But on the other hand, we see most often that they are very isolated and only try to make the most benefit for the owner, but not for the system. And so we have a Wild West situation in different ways because there's no overruling orchestration and control or steering. And so the danger is that we see major problems in future. In the USA, maybe in a different way, because it's more uncontrolled and develops. And in Europe, we have the problem, or the other problem, because regulation tries to regulate everything with micromanagement, which will also not work to develop new ways of structures. And so we need more orchestration and systemic thinking. We hear more and more often about this, but in reality, I very often see the different. We have still the silos, and so we have to overtake these silos to bring the transformation and the transition to a success. And the other side of the coin is if we are not able to do this in this systemic way, we will face major troubles with also blackouts maybe, or I fear we will see blackouts because at the moment we are not doing the transformation in a systemic way, in a coordinated way. And so we can ignore reality, but we won't be able to ignore the consequences of ignoring reality. And this was my input. And so I'm looking forward to the discussion.
Thanks, Herbert. Thank you, Herbert. So I think now we set the stage a little bit here. So, I mean, we have a success story in Austria, and which goes beyond Austria with the energy communities. At the same time, I think they're all TV based, right? So, and this is why you, Herbert, get concerned about this, and you, Peter, see a business opportunity, I think, to get to solve this problem. So, but for our listeners today, I mean, what do you think is the specific? What's the difference between the European system and the American system? I mean, I was listening to you guys, and I was not sure, Herbert, if you said we need more regulation or less regulation. But in me, my American popped up and said, "Well, we really need more regulation." So I just want to work out a little bit where you see the differences in the system. Maybe also the age of the system contributes that we're doing things differently in Europe. So maybe you guys have some perspective on this. I'm not sure who wants to start on this. Hemma?
I think you have in the States a much less reliable infrastructure, centralized infrastructure, and therefore you need to go faster to the microgrid topic. In Europe, we have a very reliable system, and so most people or actors are not seeing, or stakeholders are not seeing the necessity for changing the structure because everything is functioning. But we are changing on so many parts of the system, things without thinking what are the side effects and how we can control these changes. And this is also dangerous. So it's easier to build something new, or where you have a system which is not that reliable microgrids and new structures than in a system where everything is functioning.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Maybe I would like to talk a little bit about the basic idea of energy communities. This is quite old, I think about more than 10 or 15 years old. And the basic principle is the principle of energy sharing. So imagine you own a house, and on your rooftop you have a PV power plant, and you optimized your self-consumption, and still you have some surplus energy. And now what if you could share this energy, you could sell this energy to your neighbors or to your friends? And this is the basic idea of energy communities. And 10 years ago, we did not have any regulation or any law in the EU or in Austria to realize that kind of business model. Nowadays, we have, on the one hand, European regulation, European directives that set the frame, and we transponded this EU directives into national law in Austria. And we had the luck. Maybe we had for 5 years a Green Party. So we had a Green Party in the Austrian parliament, in the Austrian government, and they pushed energy communities in Austria. So they made a regulation and the law for Austrian energy communities, and they made this success story possible. And I would like to distinguish between what is an energy community. That's basically the organizational model, it's the business model. And the microgrid is the technology, the system that you need. So both they should play perfectly together. On the one hand, you need some kind of regulation that makes it possible, but too much regulation could also be bad for these initiatives.
Yeah. Okay.
And Michael, just one word regarding the United States, because I remember in the early days of energy sharing, there was so when there was that blockchain hype, there was also an energy sharing project. I think it was in Brooklyn.
Yeah,
They
right.
shared energy from one side of the street to the other one. So
Yeah.
there were also experiments in the States, but I'm curious how they went on.
Yeah.
I would like to add something. The energy communities are a good vehicle to go in direction energy cell system, but at the moment they have no systemic responsibility, and this is the problem, because they feel good, but they have no clue what it means for the system stability, how it works at the moment. And I think this needs more transformation, but the cell structure is also good to involve people. So it needs, again, systemic both and not either or. But we have very important to transform these energy communities to functional units and not only to billing units.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I remember an old quote by Michael Stadler. In the US, we just need two parties. One party who is paying it and one party who is building it. Is this right?
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
The American way.
But it seems to me, guys, that there's a big difference here between Europe and the United States, as I see it, because the infrastructure, right? It seems like with these energy communities, despite the fact, Herbert, that we are ignoring what's going on in the infrastructure, we need the infrastructure to share the energy, right? But my feeling is that most microgrids are built because of infrastructure problems in the United States to not deal with this. So I think we have a different concept in Europe where we rely a little bit on the society to build the infrastructure to do this energy sharing, which I think in the US is actually, we have a problem with the infrastructure. It's old. We're not sure if we can solve it, and this is why we build microgrids. So I actually learn a little bit from these conversations that these energy cells are not the same like a microgrid in terms of how they function. I mean, at the moment, I think we think about grid services, but it's a little bit different. And I think, as you described, energy communities. Okay. So I think I'm not mistaken that most of these energy communities, Hemma, Bieser, and Herbert, are just using photovoltaics at the moment, right? Or is there already a...
But we have, so one special thing about the energy communities is that you can only profit from the production in the energy community if you have a smart meter and if you have the consumption of the power of the energy community basically on the same time in 15-minute intervals. So which means in energy communities with a lot of PV power, you need a lot of people consuming electricity at noon in summertime. But there are also energy communities who have wind or water power, hydropower, and they have a better ratio. So in average, you get about 30% of your electricity from an energy community, from a PV-driven energy community, but you can raise it if you add, for example, also hydropower.
So Bieser, maybe this is for you, but it sounds like we need some grid services, right? And is this what you're thinking with your company, that you want to install batteries to help the grid, provide grid services, or is it mostly just, hey, I want to minimize my costs and I don't care what's going on with the distribution system? So maybe you want to shed some light on that.
Maybe reduce the cost is the customer view from a family house owner, and with bigger systems you have to interact with the grid, by the way, and let me say it has to do with the market, because we have a highly fragmented market in Europe, and even how many DSOs do we have in Austria? I guess 100.
Okay. Whatever, yeah. Okay.
150. That's the real problem. And it isn't that easy to integrate these concepts and these microgrids with people who don't care about. And but one of the game changer could be sector coupling in this combination. And sector coupling is maybe the chance for microgrids in Austria, because the market is changing. The fragmented market of electricity, heating, cooling, and mobility is becoming one electricity market, by the way. And this is the chance with sector coupling for new players to come in this market with new business models. And maybe energy communities are a good base for this, but from my point of view, many of customers are going in energy communities because they think it's cheaper on the long run. But I think it needs optimization on both sides. On the on-site optimization for the microgrid, and optimization from the point of the grid operators.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And I see already, Hemma, you're answering questions. So leave some for us so that we can debate them.
Oh, sorry, I was just playing around with the Q&A.
Oh, good. But Peter, what you're describing is basically there is some standardization going on, at least in the United States, on how we interconnect these microgrid controllers with DERMS systems. So, and it's IEEE 2030.7. But is there something similar going on in Europe? And Hemma, I was wondering also about this. As we heard early on from Michael Niederkopf about the energy communities and all this. And I was wondering, what about standardization here? And Peter, I know that you're a big fan of standardization. So I don't know the European landscape when it comes to standardization. So maybe there's something going on which might be interesting for the audience here.
Yeah, it's standardization. Of course, it's important because modeling and engineering will help at the first step. But by the way, we need really combine this with new processing tools to get faster in the project management. And maybe AI will help there, as I already pointed out. And this is, I think, this end-to-end idea from the customer to we need maybe a number of new scale-up companies making this end-to-end idea happen, and not only just one fragmented step on the way to energy independence.
But are utilities supporting this or no? I mean, how is your experience? I mean, I think it was on Monday, and I'm not sure if you heard it, but there was in the kickoff, we talked about utility participation, and the best approach, at least in the United States, was to really involve them, to convince them to be a partner in this. So I don't know, I mean, what are you guys seeing in Europe about these possible partnerships between utilities and energy cells? Herbert, Peter, Hemma, I'm not sure. Okay, is there partnership or no?
Let me answer the question from the point of view of a startup coach. Many of the Austrian utilities, they also have so-called innovation labs, and they are supporting startups, and they are developing together with startups new solutions. But at the end, the traditional players and the traditional system is very traditional. And yes, they're doing a lot for innovation, but maybe in their own pace, in their own speed. And while you are a startup, you would like to push things forward in totally another pace. And this is not always in line with the policy of big utilities. Am I too honest, Herbert?
No. So,
I would add the problem is also the regulation, because especially the grid operators have very small band where they can operate, and they are not allowed to do this things or to implement storage systems or other things. So it's a problem of regulation too. Also silo thinking, but main driven by regulation.
So thanks, great discussion, but we have a lot of questions coming in, and Hemma already answered a couple of them, which now seems good because I cannot go through them anyway. But I want to take one here from Alfonso. He's not clear about the difference between a microgrid and energy community. Can an energy community completely disconnect from the distribution grid? Just a quick answer.
No.
No.
No, because it's no operational unit. It's only to sharing and to share the bill, but not operational. So
but I would think that Bieser probably wants that they can disconnect in the future, right? This was the response from Bieser, right?
Maybe, but it makes commercially it makes no sense, because it's like the Pareto principle says, the last 20% to get fully independent, there is the same cost amount as before, and this makes no sense, but it be a hybrid of a microgrid, interacting with the classical grid distribution, the centralized grid, and we try to talk with the big utilities about this. From my experience in the early days with Mio Energy, I was always in a utility innovation campus, and they put this Mio Energy sticker for innovation on their website. And now I think their mind is changing.
Yeah. So I think what people, attendees have to understand is, and we didn't say this explicitly, the disconnect from the utility is not really important because the reliability of the system is still high enough that we don't see these problems that we have in the United States, right? So this, I think, is the main reason why we have these energy communities connected with the distribution system. Another question, and probably the last one, because we're running out of time in 2 minutes. Are the energy communities intended to be totally energy autonomous, so completely balanced by theory, or are they concerned with another problem like transmission grid backup? So I think we already handled this. So, but I know that you guys have an opinion to energy independence here. So I'm not sure who wants to take the last question here.
As told already before, at the moment they have no task to be operational, and this should be the task for the future, because otherwise we will get big problems, because also who pays for the rest of the system.
Okay.
And so
maybe one last sentence, Herbert and Michael. So energy communities are basically building platforms, building models. The electricity still flows in the distribution grid from the power plant to the household. And what we try to develop in the transition labs is to bring together energy communities, business models, new services with the technology that lies in the microgrids or in energy cells.
Yeah, this is a great final statement, Hemma. Peter, you want to just add something? Did I cut you off?
And at the end, maybe a new full-service companies will partly displace the old corporate national utility model.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So this was really great, and I am really thankful for having you guys, and also thanks for everyone who was powering through this morning, which is not over because we have now in 5 minutes a session about Fiji. But thanks everyone. Thanks our Hemma, Herbert, and Peter, and see you later in the conference.
It was a pleasure. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.